taken at different exposures. These were shot the weekend with the purpose of doing this tutorial. Quickly, I'm not going to waste a huge amount of time. I'm going to show you how to effectively blend these images together. So we're going to take image 754, image 755 and image 756. We've selected those just using the command tool and clicking on them in Mac. Effectively here, now we've got these images selected, we are going to go over to the photo section and select the photo Merge Hdr, and effectively it'll start to blend those two together. Now in Lightroom we don't have the benefit of the tone mapping tool in quite the same way as we would in a piece of software like Photomatix. However, this is going to give you a very broad dynamic range within your shot, within your exposures. These were all shot on a tripod, shot at the shot in manual, at the same aperture with some adjustment to the shutter speed. Now, whilst we're waiting for this to create the HDR preview, obviously one of the things that I want to talk to you about is how easy this can be in terms of your HDR workflow within Lightroom. The fact is that there are better pieces of software for doing HDR imaging, and certainly better HDR tone mapping tools that are available from other software suppliers. Lightroom is not the be-all and end-all in terms of making HDR photos, that's for sure. What it does do is give you a relatively quick, relatively easy, accessible tool that allows you to create HDR images really just with kind of no real hassle. It's a very simple, very easy way to work, and that's one of the reasons that I quite like this. Here we blended the three images together, and there are a couple of problems with this shot, and we can see straight away that there are, the camera is actually appearing in shadow on the tripod here. That's something we can deal with in Photoshop. But we've already got a slightly wider dynamic range than we had on any of the original shots. Deghost amount is set to norm, auto tone, and effectively we're just going to click and merge those three together. We can see the progress indicator in the top left hand side, where we are creating this HDR file, and we'll just let that go through its purposes. Now I could be teaching you effectively how to suck eggs here, but for those of you that are new to photography, HDR is literally high dynamic range imaging. That is the process of blending a number of different exposures together to create a file with a broader dynamic range that will allow you to reveal more of the shadow detail and to retain more of the highlight detail whilst you're processing the image. Now, one of the other real advantages of doing HDR photography within Lightroom is the fact that we're actually still working with raw data. We're not processing this into a TIFF file, into a JPEG file, and we're still staying with the actual raw image, the raw data. So effectively we've got almost a lossless format for us to edit in our post-processing. And ultimately that's going to result in having a greater level of image quality than we would otherwise do. Obviously we're still working through this here. What I am going to do is just click off some of these side menus and navigation tools. We're just going to wait for that to fully process through, and then that will appear as a fully raw image within our software. As you can see here, we've actually got one which I kind of ran through earlier on as I played around with this file a little bit. What I am going to do is start you from scratch with a new one. So effectively the file that we are going to use is now here, has appeared here on screen. We'll click through to that, and we're going to take that through to the Develop module, which should be appearing on screen now. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is Bamburgh Castle, which is in the UK. It's on the northeast coast of the UK. It's a very picturesque, very beautiful place, a great place to come and photograph. These were nothing but snapshots that we effectively took on an afternoon out prior to the weekend. What I am going to do is have a look at this image now and talk you through what we need to do. Now, looking at this shot straight away, we've already got a greater dynamic range in there. We've got a lot of detail here, but we're still retaining some of the highlight details. Now, shadow-wise and exposure-wise, I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Not too much, to be fair. Let's have a little look. There we go. Now, what I do want to do is to use a gradient tool. We've already used this in one or two of the other tutorials. I'm going to pull that over to the left-hand side of this shot. Pull that down. We're going to go with a little bit of an angle so that we're matching the horizon. And then we're just going to drag that exposure tool down slightly just to darken down the sky a little bit. Now that kind of looks quite well so far. Quite happy with that. We're going to boost the clarity a little bit over there as well. Now, coming back in here, we'll take that gradient tool off. We're going to go back to the main actual palette. 1 second. There we go. And we're going to boost the vibrance across the image. Let's have a little look at the colour tones there. Bringing some of the warmth back out into that shot. Shadow detail is already quite heavily boosted. Let's have a little look. We can see these blue markers here giving us a black point. Quite happy with that so far. Tones, we've got the curves tool here. And once again, we've got the option of just putting in a standard medium curve onto this image just to boost the contrast slightly, and already that's looking quite a lot better. If I press the Y key, we're going to get a before and after version of our HDR file, and already we can see some marked difference between the two. Now, bearing in mind that the left hand image, which is a before file of the before HDR, that already actually looks better than some of our original single exposures. So quite quickly we're working with this file, we're making this into something which is already looking more like an image that could be printed and used effectively on the wall, could be used within your own photo albums, certainly a much better shot. Pressing Y will take that image away again, we're back to our original file. Now, having a little look at this, we'll play around with the white slightly. Let's have a little look. We don't want to raise those too much. Always a little bit of detail that we lost nearly in the moon there, which is just here. Unusual to see the moon during the daytime, but great opportunity to photograph something a little bit different. So we'll keep that nice and tight. Now then, we're going to press K on the keyboard, and we're going to bring up one of the brush tools. Double clicking effect will reset all of the brushes back to 0. I'm going to add a little bit of clarity. Now if we have a little look, we're going to have some clarity just around the castle. And we're going to work that over this embankment here. We've got some really nice light just catching some of the top sections. We'll work that over the top of the rocks as well. You can see a little bit more of the contrast coming out within the image. Let's have a little look there. Okay, now that's looking much better. Now there's not really a huge amount left to do to this image. We've got a variety of different options if we do wish to play around a little bit further. We've already boosted the vibrance there. We might come down and decide to make some adjustments to hue and saturation. Coming into the hue here, we've got obviously some of the warmer light where the yellows are. We can add a little bit overcut that there, but we can add a little bit more warm light into there. And effectively just playing around with the sliders will give you a little bit of an idea as to where you want to be. Now, dragging the yellow slider over into the oranges a little bit more looks quite nice on this shot. And generally speaking, I'm reasonably happy with that. I've not played around with the lens correction. I decided to start working with the shot straight away. You can click the enable profile correction, and obviously that will try and straighten out some of the angles of the lens. Makes a little bit of a difference there pretty much immediately. The manual tool allows you to obviously adjust verticals, perspective, etc. Not going to really fuss around with that too much. We're going to go back, leave that as we are. Pressing L in Lightroom and pressing it again, we'll put this onto a black background. So you can see the image in isolation and decide whether or not you're quite liking where that shot's going so far. Now, as I say, we've got one other issue to deal with in this shot, which is around this section here where the camera, the shadow from the camera with the sun behind us has appeared slightly into this photo. Always difficult to avoid that when the sun's behind you. Pressing L again, we're going to come back to the original screen. Very, very simple solution. If it's not going to tighten down your crop too much, is to effectively use a crop tool. We've got the lock set on here, so we retain the original format of the crop. Now, let's have a little look. We should be able to still leave plenty of space within this photo. Let's have a look without making, there we go. Double clicking will now crop that image, but we're keeping the same original aspect ratio. I'm going to turn the blacks off, press the L button again, let that photo settle in, and let's see what that image looks like. Now there we go, we've got a huge difference over the original image without really that much work being applied. We've got a very usable and very nice landscape image. Hopefully that's shown you a little bit about just editing using the HDR tool, and also obviously adding in and making some changes to the HDR file once you've actually got into the position where that file's loaded within Lightroom. Once again, some key pointers to remember: your HDR blends. Lightroom can do up to 5 HDR files, or 5 individual exposures, should I say, converted into a HDR file at any one time. It's then once again loading that into your Lightroom library where you can go and edit that file. And obviously it's raw data, so we're still editing from the raw file, keeping maximum quality. And ultimately you're going to end up with a much nicer, much better image. This is a great solution for those times when you're shooting without neutral density filters and you want to retain the full dynamic range of the shot. We've not done a huge amount to it, but once again, as you can see there, straight away, a much improved photo. Hopefully that's helpful, guys, and we shall be back again with some more tutorials very shortly. Thank you.